takeoff.
What's up, everybody? It's Mover, and welcome back to Mover Ruins Movies, a special feature of the channel where we take a look at certain scenes from certain movies, usually aviation related, and talk about how it would have worked out in real life. So trigger warning, if you think movies are documentaries, this is probably not the channel for you. This is mostly tongue-in-cheek, but I will point out some stuff that's realistic and stuff that's not. So in today's episode, we're taking a look at the 2012 movie called Flight, about an airline captain that saves an aircraft that has an issue, a mechanical issue, much like the Alaska Airlines Flight 261 that had a jack screw malfunction. Unfortunately, in real life, that aircraft crashed and all the souls on board perished. But in this movie, Denzel Washington plays the captain, and he basically saves the aircraft, but then an investigation ensues. So we'll take a look at a couple scenes from the movie and kind of talk about how it worked in real life and how it wasn't. I know I do a lot of fighter stuff, but I am an airline pilot. I've been flying the 737, 800, and the MAX since 2016. So I have been doing this for a little while, as well as my reserve gig in the Air Force Reserve flying T-38. All right, we're looking at three of the scenes from Flight. This one, they are just now meeting each other for the first time, the captain and the first officer, on this short flight.
We've flown together before? I don't think so, sir. You sure? Yeah, Ken Evans. Whitaker.
That's pretty realistic. I work for a fairly large airline, and I don't think I've ever flown with the same captain more than once. It just happens. The FO, first officer, does walk around, pre-flight duties, all this stuff, gets everything set up, and then the captain does his stuff and walks in, and that may be the first time you've ever met. So this is kind of a realistic conversation here. I know prior to this, he had smuggled some alcohol into his orange juice and probably reeked of alcohol. And, that's one of the things that kind of irks me about this is, a good FO probably would have smelled the alcohol in his breath and gone, yeah, we're not flying today. It's just a very serious thing. And the thing about the first officer is it's a trained position. These are experienced pilots. At the low-cost carrier, which I think this is what this is supposed to be, or at the legacy or major airline level, they're very experienced. They're not trainees. They've probably either prior regional or prior military or charter or something. They've got a lot of hours, so they kind of treat this guy like he's a trainee here.
Nice to meet you. My pleasure. Oxygen check. Checks. You want to hit? No, thank you.
So, yeah, you check the oxygen every flight. I take it out and check it and stuff, but I don't typically take a hit of it. That is true. 100% oxygen will make you feel better if you're hungover or you're not feeling great or something like that. So that's, the effects of 100% oxygen are true. However, would he offer it to his FO? I mean, that'd probably be a warning sign too, right? Because the FO and the captain both have it on their respective sides, and at this point, the FO is like, man, you're on my do not pair list. I'm out. I'm not flying with this guy. So probably a little weird for a captain to be offering a hit of oxygen like it's some kind of peace pipe or something. But the FO's face right here.
Thank you, sir. Sure? Yes, sir. Okay.
Yeah. Then he just kind of throws it to the side. I don't know about this airplane, but it actually is in a quick donning. There's a box, so to speak, for it. That's where it goes. So you just kind of toss it to the side, and that's the biggest ass pain with the oxygen, is putting it back in the container there.
How you feeling today, sir?
Yeah, there you go.
A little tired. A quick turnaround for me, 10 turns in 3 days. Off tomorrow.
That's a lot of flying. And that's a realistic conversation.
Oh, thank you.
And your aspirin.
Thank you.
And the manifest with 102 souls on board.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's get them tucked in. We're ready to push.
You got it.
I mean, realistic. Usually it's the gate agent that comes up and says, hey, we got 169 souls on board, and, we're ready to close. But the flight attendant can tell them that too. They close the door, and at this point, cockpit door is locked. You probably won't see the flight attendant again until, if you got to do a bathroom break or get meals or something like that. So let's take a look at the next clip. So this clip is the takeoff, and we're kind of midway through the takeoff here. And the FO appears to be the pilot monitoring. So in the way it works in the airlines, you've got a pilot flying and a pilot monitoring. The pilot flying just flies, just like the name suggests. So he's doing all the work in the controls, and the pilot monitoring is talking on the radio, picking the gear up until they put the autopilot on. The pilot monitoring is doing all the mode control panel stuff, spinning the altitude, spinning the heading, and stuff like that. And the captain is just focused on flying. And then once he puts the autopilot on, then he can worry about, putting stuff in the FMS and spinning buttons and stuff like that.
Cross-check. It's like a video game, right?
So he goes 80 knots cross-check, and that's actually a call-out. So it's a challenge and response almost, I guess you can call it. So the pilot monitoring would go 80 knots or 80 depending on airline, standardization, and then the other pilot would go check to make sure his side also says that. That's a good way to cross-check the different sources for airspeed. Rainy and wet.
Nothing like a little 30-knot crosswind to exercise the old sphincter muscle.
Yeah, he's jibber-jabbering.
And rotate.
This looks a lot like a 737 cockpit.
We're at a positive rate. You're up.
Yep, so that's realistic, positive rate. So you got a positive rate of climb, and the pilot flying calls for the gear up. Realistic radio calls.
Don't want autopilot, I'm flying today.
So he says, don't want autopilot, I'm flying today, and typically that's not even a discussion. He just decides. If he wants to put the autopilot on, he reaches up and hits it, and if he doesn't, he doesn't. So the FO's face on this is just, I know they did it for theatrics, and again, everything I say here, this is just a movie, so this is not hating or anything like that, it's just a movie, but this is, he would be like, all right, I guess you're flying, okay, no problem. But he wouldn't be the one to put the autopilot on, at least my airline. I don't know what other airlines do. And my fleet, it may be different amongst other fleets. This is 737 experience only.
Departure, this is Southjet 227. We got some rough chop, I'd say moderate to. I'd say severe turbulence, definitely severe turbulence.
Yeah, severe turbulence, there's actually charts for the levels of turbulence, and severe turbulence is, no kidding, you have no ability to control the aircraft. So I don't know that this is severe turbulence, and I don't know that the captain would be the one. Again, it's the pilot monitoring's job to talk on the radio, although sometimes captains will, chime in just to give them something if they don't, want to say, hey, tell them this, which, okay, very valid. But yeah, it's probably not severe at this point. And again, they really wouldn't, if it's this bad and they're in the known thunderstorms, they usually shut down the departure corridor, so they wouldn't fly you into this in the first place. They would either, if they could, turn the airport around, so take off on a different runway and do a different departure to get away from this weather, or do something else, because they really wouldn't knowingly fly into this stuff. And if they were, most captains would go, yeah, we're not taking off into this just for safety, because the biggest threat here is wind shear, and we train for this in the simulators all the time, where severe downdrafts, microbursts, stuff like that, where it's very dangerous and you can end up losing altitude, lift, etc. very quickly.
No meal service today.
No meal service today. And you don't always have meal service on every flight. It just depends on how long the leg is, how far you're going, stuff like that. Not necessarily whether it's bumpy. And the FO's looking at him because he seems like, this dude's definitely going on my do not pair list. I'm not flying with this guy again.
What are you doing?
So that's looks like a en route chart. You usually wouldn't fly with that, although this is back in 2012. I don't know what they were doing back then, but usually you just have your iPad up there's no reason to have the en route chart. But this is pretty cool. Just taking a look at this, I really think this was a 737 cockpit because this looks identical to the NGs that I've flown. So what you've got here is, you know, you've got your true airspeed, your ground speed, your wind direction and speed. So they got 17 knots. They're flying south. They even put the weather on here. And then they've got all these little airports and stuff. So they did a really good job with attention to detail on this. And I know this will be a factor here in a second, this thing, but they've got the, looks like it says TCAS off. That's probably not a good thing, but I kind of think this is, I mean, if this is not a 737, then the Mad Dog that they're making this out of looks identical.
Leveling off. What? See that little sliver of black between those two ugly clouds?
All right, so this is interesting. Red is bad, obviously, so this is all convective weather, stuff like that. They're going to ORL, and they've got the hides up, which you typically wouldn't have. But this will become a factor later when they'll say, I'll remember to point this out, but they go, hey, we lost our hydraulics. Well, you've got a gauge right here. This will tell you if you lost your hydraulics. But so they're climbing up, and he's wanting to shoot the gap, which, yeah, not a great idea, but, you know, I mean, you don't really, he doesn't have the option to go around it, I guess, as you'd want to. Usually you want, you know, 20 miles on either side of a storm before you try to do that.
That's a pocket of smooth air squatting right over consent. Thread the needle. Turn us right 30 degrees. Departure shuts at 227. We need to deviate 30 degrees right. For weather. For weather.
Yeah. They make this out to be something way bigger than it is. Usually the FO or the pilot flying goes, hey, I need to go, let's go right, let's go around it. And the FO would go, hey, let's go center, whatever, South Jet, whoever these guys are, 227, request deviate right for weather. And they go, hey, deviate right for weather approved. Let me know when you're back on course. Not a big deal. Usually ATC, they're very good, especially low altitude and even at high altitude. They're very good at pointing out, you know, moderate to extreme areas of precipitation, what other airliners have done. If you need to deviate, let us know, you know, and sometimes even vectoring you around. So this wouldn't really be that big of a deal, and the captain wouldn't have to tell him for weather. I mean, obviously it's for weather. Everybody knows it's for weather. Yeah, I mean, that's what they would say, though. I mean,
you know, brother.
They're really making the FO look like a dunce, though. Oh, Lord. This part, he's straight up lying to the guy.
We're leaving 9,000 for flight level 180. We're approaching our maximum airspeed. Damn right. We need the speed to punch through this crap.
No. So most airliners have max turbulence penetration speed. Giggity. It's the fastest you want to go, especially around Barber Pole and the red ticker tape there. You don't want to overspeed the aircraft, and in turbulence and weather, you want to slow down. Which, again, for structural components of the aircraft and to maintain and actually for the people in the back too, you slow down, which allows you to climb faster. You know, and in turn, you would get up above it faster. You wouldn't want to level off and go punching through this. That's not the right answer. You want to climb up out of it because higher is typically better with stuff like this because the thunderstorms, you know, obviously you can't outclimb one with max tops of 50,000 feet, but if you can get above some of the rough air, it's usually better. So I don't think you'd really want to level off here and speed up, especially not around the operating limits, because any little pocket of turbulence can put you right over the structural limits of the aircraft, and now you've got a problem because you're into the clacker, and you know it's not good.
Over speeding, sir. Trying to get out of this shitty air. If that's all right with you, Junior.
Junior, this is a great captain.
Departure, this is Southjet 227. We're experiencing some rough air, encountering some severe downdrafts. We're in our climb now.
And now he wants to climb. He's
Your airspeed, you're way too fast for this rough air. I'm right on the line. Settle down.
And he's pushing the throttles up now. You wouldn't really hear it in the cockpit. I mean, it doesn't make that big of a noise change, especially on this where the engines are way in the back. Ah, clear air. There's the chart there that he's flying around with. I don't know if people will be clapping, but these are the same people that probably clap at a good landing. Why are you clapping? Stop clapping. All right, let's look at the next one. And this is the crash scene.
26 minutes.
So Captain's been asleep, I guess from the vodka he had. Flight attendants don't usually just hang out in the cockpit like this. Uh-oh.
Whoa, what is that? The elevator feels really stiff, son. All right.
That's what she said.
All right, Margaret, get everybody strapped in. Get everybody strapped in.
Why are they not all strapped in? I guess she's talking flight attendants.
Pull left hard, sir.
Nose down. Ooh. Power back's good. Good idea.
Ladies and gentlemen, fasten your seatbelts now. Fasten your seatbelts securely now.
I have no control on my side. No control at all, sir. Lost hydraulics. Center, this is Southjet 227. We've lost our hydraulics and feels like our pitch control.
Why is he in such a hurry to tell ATC? And you don't even know that you... I mean, ATC can't help you with hydraulics. They don't know.
Everybody's belted in.
Okay, so you're in a deep dive here, and she's just walking back and forth from the cockpit willy-nilly. She would not be in the loop on this. And I know, it's a movie. I mean, it's just the way they wrote it, but she would not be. She'd have probably run right into the center pedestal and the throttles if she tried to come back in the cockpit like this. And he says he lost the hydraulic. Remember I was talking about earlier? You've got a gauge, so you know if you've lost the hydraulics. It's not just, oh, well, based on the controls, I think we lost the hydraulics. You can check it out. You can look.
Get belted in with everybody in brace positions. Yes, that is affirmed. We are in a dive. We are in a dive. We have lost.
He really wants to tell ATC everything.
I want you to throw out everything you got. The speed brakes, the gear, everything. Gear, speed brakes.
Door comes off. Yeah, that's what happens when, I mean, it can happen when you overspeed the gear like that.
Gears down.
Bracing a little bit early at 20,000 feet.
Do it.
So I'm not sure about the fictional Mad Dog in this movie, but the real Mad Dogs and the 737s and I think most of the Airbuses, Airbuy, don't have fuel dumps. And I know the Mad Dogs don't have winglets. And also, you typically don't have your shoulder harnesses on at altitude. Usually just right around with the lap belt and then for takeoff and landing. He really wants to tell ATC everything that's going on. Aviate, navigate, communicate. He wants to communicate.
Dump the flash, dump the flash. Just do it. Do it 30 degrees. Now we got to revert to manual control. This side first. Okay, got it.
Manual reversion, I guess that goes to like the cable pulleys or something. FO's like a huge nervous Nelly. I can't reach it.
No, stay strapped in, stay strapped in. Margaret! Margaret!
And now Margaret, from the back, again, doors closed, she can't get up there.
All right, just relax. Calm down, calm down, calm down. Get strapped into the jump seat.
They should have had a jump seater. That would have made it more realistic, I guess.
227 Atlanta, fuel dump is approved.
Thank you.
Fuel dump is approved. We already dumped, sorry guys. In the magical fuel dumps we didn't have. Yeah, she'd be tumbling down the aisle right now.
It says manual control. You see it?
Yeah.
Okay, on the count of 3, I want you to pull it up, turn it clockwise, push it back down. Ready? 1, 2, 3. It's okay, it's okay.
Did it work?
Yeah, come on.
Oh, and now she's down. Oof.
Oh, Lord, we're coming on 7,000.
Oh, Lord.
Evan, listen to me. When I say I want you to retract the flap.
It's a Top Gun moment right here.
Trim us nose down, okay? But everything's going to be opposite, so make sure you trim us nose down. Hey, trim down, what are you going to do?
You gotta do what?
I want you to push these forwards, full power, full throttle. Can you do that? Okay, when I
Full power. He's going to go inverted.
we're gonna roll it. Okay, say I love you, Trevor. Black box, say I love you, Trevor.
I love you, Trevor.
And the cockpit voice recorder, which I guess is part of it.
Got control.
Look how slow it's rolling. So if you roll that slow at that altitude, it just changes your impact angle. There's not enough altitude to even if they completed the roll, to go inverted like this. And unfortunately, this is what Alaska 261 tried, but there's just not enough altitude to do it. They're at 700 feet. So they're going through 700 feet, throwing the gear up, and they'd have been a smoking hole by now. I don't think a modern airliner, I know Tex Johnson did the 707 roll, but I don't think a modern airliner's got the nose authority, the elevator authority, or the wing to sustain inverted flight like this. And especially not the roll rate to do it in the altitude they're doing. I mean, they'd have just been a smoking hole that just rolled a little bit. It's just too slow for a transport category aircraft. And it certainly won't maintain level or climbing flight. It just doesn't have the wing for it. Yeah, this won't happen.
Maintain altitude like this.
They're maintaining altitude. I don't see that happening with the camber of the wing.
Atlanta Center, South 227, we are inverted. I repeat, we are inverted.
And I don't know why he needs to tell them they're inverted. That's low oil pressure's realistic because of where the pickups are. However, you'll see here in a second, it causes some other, there you go, there's a fire light.
Put it out.
So I don't know if they're trying to say that the low oil pressure, because they say here in a second that the engines are burning up. I don't think low or no oil pressure will immediately cause a fire. I mean, maybe over time, but in the time that they've been doing this, I think the engine would keep running. And then when it finally seizes, then you might have maybe a hydraulic fire or something like that. But I don't think it would cause a fire this quickly. So he shuts down, what is that, the number 1 engine? They're inverted.
All right, we're not going to make that. Our engines are burning up.
So now he's got 1 engine.
At a road ahead of us, we're going to set it down there.
Roger, 227.
And now the other engine.
We're coming back around.
And he pulls that. So once he pulled the fire handle, what that does is it shuts down the fuel and the hydraulics. It shuts the engines down. So at this point, they have no engines and no thrust.
It hits full power.
Yeah, full power is not going to happen when you just pull the fire handles. Even if you don't fire the bottles release the agent that puts out the fire. Even if you don't do that, it still shuts everything off to the engine as soon as you pull that handle. Oh geez. And they definitely didn't have the altitude to roll, so as soon as they start this, they're going to knife edge into the ground. Not at 1,000 feet in an airliner.
Full power.
Yeah, the engines are already gone. There's no full power. But hey, just a movie, right? There's no engine fail light. That's awesome. And now the engines are finally rolling back. This FO is terrible. Just screaming. Oh, and now they're gliding. So whatever problem they had is now suddenly fixed because they're just gliding and not diving towards the ground. So obviously not the jack screw. And of course there's a church right in the middle of the field. Oof. Time compression does happen in emergencies. No.
Race. Race for impact.
Minimums. I don't think minimums would have been set, and that sounded a lot like an Airbus. And that's the end of it. So, okay, so it's just a movie. I know it's Hollywood. The rest of the movie is about the hearings and Denzel's struggle with alcoholism and all that stuff. There are programs I believe it's called the HIMSS program, that can help you if you have alcohol problems. Obviously, aviation takes it very seriously. In the military, it's 12 hours bottle to throttle. In the civilian world, it's 8 hours. And even in some airlines, it's 12 hours. They've actually got their own policy for that. And there's been pilots, there have been instances of pilots taking breathalyzers, and the legal limit in aviation is quite less than the legal limit for driving, than the .08 standard. So him struggling with alcohol, okay. Him flying after taking a couple bottles from the galley, which becomes a factor in the movie, no. The FO not speaking up, probably not. Although, you know, it is possible. Maybe he's new, maybe he's on probation, stuff like that. But I didn't get to watch the whole movie, but it's got a cool opening scene that I can't talk about on YouTube because of reasons. And it's just a movie. So hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Excuse me. Oh, no. Oh! Been a lot of that. Really quiet with the doors off. All box 2. Don't be a douche. That's rule number 1. Make them tell you no.